Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vladimir Šucha, and I'm Director General of the Joint Research Center, which is Science Service of European Commission. On behalf of the Joint Research Center, on behalf of the European Commission, warm welcome to this conference, which is supposed to discuss what is the role of innovation, how we can use the innovation to face the challenges of the future. So it's my great privilege to warmly welcome Deputy Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Commissioner of Member of European Commission, Commissioner Gabriel, Mayor of Sofia, two deputy ministers, and first Vice President of the Committee of Regions. We have in front of us many challenges. We know many of them, and they are becoming a sort of mantra, and this is the climate change, environment, natural resources, water scarcity. We hear about that every day. But they are a little bit newer and some less trivial challenges which are in front of us, and we are talking about them in the past few years only, and that's a demographic change, migration, security, geopolitical shift, and we have quite new challenges which we are talking about only in the past 2-3 years, and that's artificial intelligence, digital transformation, hybrid threats, discontent of citizens across Europe, and I think that Commissioner Gabriel is the best person to talk about those. And it's also about the fairness, it's about resilience in our society, how we are going to cope with all these sudden dramatic changes, but also the slow burning processes which we are facing in our societies. I think that we all agree that business as usual is not going to help us to solve all those traditional, but also less traditional new challenges which our society is facing. So then we need innovation. But we know, and there is an important body of evidence, scientific body of evidence saying that human beings are everything but not ready to change. We don't like to change. So then how to square this circle? What to do in this respect? We have sort of dichotomy in this respect. So then it's obviously the most important answer to this is innovation. And what to do, how to innovate? What is innovation? And I think that we all agree that all those dreams of transplanting Silicon Valley to somewhere, to Bulgaria or Central Europe or Western Europe are just fairy tales, and we know that it is not working. We know that all these challenges are easy to mention, are easy to describe in general terms, but they are translated into completely different circumstances, into completely different symptoms at in different regions. So then what is important are the places. Definitely places, they matter. And I think that this is something which was actually discovered very well by European Commission and European Union a long time ago when the European Union started with regional policy. I think that the current funding or financial perspective upgraded this dimension of regions and places into something which is called smart specialization, which I personally consider as one of the most important policy and political innovation of the past decade worldwide. And I think that we are in front of a new generation of smart specialization, of intelligence which needs to be based in the places, based in the local circumstances, in local environment, but at the same time looking into nationwide perspective, macro-regional perspective, but also to whole European perspective, because this is the only way how we can solve our local problems. We need to understand the local problems. We have to be very smart. We have to be very intelligent in solving these problems of the local communities, but this needs to be a European solution because we cannot solve everything within the region with regional capacities. And I think this is fantastic added value of European Union that we can learn, we can get inspired in spite of the fact that we are solving the local regional issues and we are serving the local and regional communities. And I think that this combination is exactly at the core of this conference. So then I'm very happy to welcome you all at this conference, and I hope very much that at the end of second day, tomorrow in the evening when we close the conference, everybody will be bringing back home something, some inspiration, something new, good contact, good relationship with somebody you haven't met before. So that would, if that would happen, we would be extremely pleased. So once again, let me welcome you warmly and thank the Bulgarian presidency with which we are working very, very closely since the first moment of the Bulgarian presidency started 1st of January this year. And I must say that this conference is a top event of the collaboration of Joint Research Center and Bulgarian presidency. So now we have this short introductory speeches, introductory panel, and then we go to the major panel of today. So then for the introduction, let me introduce the mayor of Sofia, the mayor of this beautiful city which is hosting the conference, and it's Jordanka Fandakova.
Mr. Shuha, Mr. Donchev, Madam Gabriel, Mr. Makula, Academician Kowalski, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants in the conference, allow me to begin by welcoming all our guests to our sunny, green, and blooming city. It's a great pleasure for me to open the conference on intelligent specialization, smart specialization, one of the leading topics that together with a number of our partners we have been working together on this issue, and many of them are present with us today. The municipality of Sofia is one of the first municipalities which drew up and adopted its own strategy for smart specialization. I see the development of technologies as an opportunity for this city and this country to develop rapidly and improve the standard of living of all its people, specifically the young ones. And now we see that this strategy bears fruit, and therefore I appreciate the efforts of everyone who was involved in this strategy. Sofia, as a digital capital, focusing on digital technologies and the creative industries, is in the focus of this strategy. In the environment of very rapidly developing trends in this field, it's important that we cooperate with all stakeholders, the local authorities, the government, academia, business, NGOs, all citizens. This turns the strategy for smart specialization for Sofia so topical. And it allows Sofia to use effectively and efficiently its capital of well-educated citizens, its infrastructure, and its resources. Let me quote a few examples of initiatives and projects, partnerships, which this municipality is working upon at the moment. In the last few years, we have actively been supporting a series of events, and some of them are rather serious, rather substantial in the field of innovations and technologies. There are the annual festivals taking place in Sofia, like Innovation Explorer and Webit, and the municipality is a partner for these events. We also conducted the first municipal hackathon, where the tasks were linked to the development of the city, and then we supported the projects, presented them to business, and then annually we organize this hackathon. We also support similar events organized by business, by other partners of ours. Even now, as we speak, there is a competition for programmers for Sofia Tech City. The deadline for filing in proposals is the 18th of May, and we appreciate the efforts of all candidates. On the 17th of June, only within weeks, the Digital Assembly is taking place in Sofia, and I would like to thank Commissioner Gabriel for supporting Sofia being the host city for this event, which is the biggest in this year. And right after it, the Webbit event is taking place. Then we organize the Balkan Hackathon, which is the first of its kind, and it places Sofia as the innovation hub of the Balkans and encourages the digital connectivity of the Balkan countries. The municipality in Sofia supports the ideas which would be awarded prizes in the course of these events, and then we do all it takes to support the implementation. As I mentioned, we do this regularly. Sofia is the fastest growing city, the fastest growing economy in this country. It has the highest share in the GDP of the country. 40% of Bulgaria's GDP originates in the city of Sofia. The investment climate in the city is stable. The city generates 1/3 of the export of the country, and the information technologies are the fastest developing sector. They makes 5.7% of the economy of the city, and the companies in this sector have 1.2 billion lev worth of export. The IT sector companies in this city are over 40,000, and this sector registers very high productivity. More than 100 IT companies of the ones located in Sofia educate and train experts in the field. After all, well-trained work labor is a precondition for investments. In Sofia, 50% of the labor force are university graduates, and of course the main universities of Bulgaria are located in Sofia. Some more statistics. The municipality of Sofia was the first that opened its data to IT. We started with the budget, with the programs in the field of culture, public procurement. So we have 27 data sets which are accessible to all. And we expect another 23 sets to be uploaded by the end of the year. The municipality of Sofia has been working towards more comfortable administrative services for the citizens, and together with the government, a lot of efforts are being invested in that. I'd like to thank Deputy Prime Minister Donchev for that. REDIX is a set of registries in this country, and this is the way to improving the citizens for the services by way of using technology. It's very important for us to continue creating free Wi-Fi in public areas. You know that in Sofia there is a lot of free Wi-Fi in public areas now. Everywhere in the public transport, in the underground specifically, there is free Wi-Fi as well. We took part in a project to set up a public area with free Wi-Fi. It was an initiative by Commissioner Gabriel, and she started up this initiative for the whole EU. We expect to implement this project successfully. Without boring you, I hope I can still mention that the municipality of Sofia is working on a project to set up a laboratory for innovation and ideas generation. This is a project for the young people. It is linked up to improving the labor market, the economic activity of younger people, which is a way to deal with migration. We are working on many other projects at the moment, and let me say that it is doable. It is being done because we have active partnerships, both internally with businesses, with government institutions, with civil society organizations, and also with our partners, like-minded organizations in the EU. Sofia is the coordinator of the digital transition within the city agenda. Together with the Finnish city of Oulu and Estonia, we cooperate on a project under the Committee of the Regions, and we hope that through investment we can provide an additional impetus to business in this country and in this city by focusing on startups. We are involving startups in providing services to the citizens in public transport, waste management, communications, and communicating with these citizens. And we appreciate the efforts of all active young people who put forward ideas and help us implement them. I'd like to wish every success to this conference, and its outcome would be important to all of us, not only to Sofia, but all representatives of the local authorities. And let me once more say that the development of technologies is the most trusted manner to make our cities more accessible, to develop them and make them better fitted for the needs of young people. Thank you.
Many thanks, Madam Mayor. It was quite an impressive overview of different innovation activities of the city. And I must say that in a movement which we started a few years ago together with European Parliament and Committee of Regions, where we want to show that science is not only, or it can be used right now, not only in 20 or 30 years from now. So we established this movement, Science Meets Parliaments and Science Meets Regions, and I must say that Sofia is one of the most active participants of this, so many thanks for it, many thanks for introduction. And let me now introduce Alexander Manolev, Deputy Minister of Economy of Bulgaria. Ministry of Economy of Bulgaria is one of the co-organizers of this conference, so Deputy Minister, it's my pleasure to give you the floor.
Уважаеми господин Дончев,
Mr. Donchev, Mrs. Fandekova, Ms. Gabrielle, Mr. Shucha, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased I have this opportunity to welcome you to Bulgaria, and that the topic of today's conference has piqued so much interest. We've got a commissioner, vice prime minister, a mayor of the most fast-developing city in Bulgaria, representatives of Bulgarian institutions, the business. This reaffirms the importance of this topic for the EU. This is why this is one of the priorities for our presidency, and it is an area in which we should not only incentivize dialogue, but also deepen cooperation so that we are competitive on the global market, because the digitization of the economy is already happening. It's here, and it will be changing the labor market as we know it. The EU has always been a leader in introducing innovation, but today, A large number of member states invest a lot in research and development, and we should do our best to meet the challenges of the present day. It is a fact that Bulgaria is a country that still has a long way to go forward, but we have already had our successes and our contributions. In terms of innovation dynamics, Bulgaria is at the 4th place in the 2014 ranking, which means that there are innovative processes in support of our policy. The Bloomberg ranking of 2018, which covers more than 200 economies, ranks Bulgaria in the top 50 of the most innovative states in the country, being at the 47th place. This you can also see in the infrastructure in our country. There is a sustainable growth in sectors with high added value. In the past few years, 2016, 2017, nearly 50% of all investment certificates have been for high technology production and services. And we had an even better start in 2018 so far. Out of all the issued certificates, nearly 60% are for high-tech production and services. Like I said, these processes should not only be considered on the national level, they should also be considered from a European point of view. Therefore, together with the Bulgarian presidency, the DG will introduce a discussion platform for place-based innovation. It will be focusing on Southeast Europe and the Western Balkans, and will seek to provide constructive dialogue for the business, the academia, the regional authorities, and the universities. They'll be taking part in this discussion of best practice so that all stakeholders can tap the potential of smart specialization. Eventually, we hope that all regions in Europe will make use of smart specialization so that they completely fulfill their potential. I wish you every success in today's conference. I hope you'll be able to reach specific conclusions and draw up recommendations. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Manolev. And now let me invite on the stage to these beautiful armchairs. The top part of today's program is this golden panel, which is composed of Mr. Donchev, Deputy Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Maria Gabriel, European Commissioner for Digital Economy and Society, Ivan Dimov, Deputy Minister for Education and Science, Marku Markula, Vice President of the Committee of Regions, and Professor Julian Rewalski, President of Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. Okay, so what I mentioned in my introductory speech is few challenges. It was in the light of this panel that I don't need to repeat it. We have plenty of challenges, and all those challenges, as I said, are stratospheric challenges every politician, everybody is talking about, but they are translated into concrete problems and issues in different countries, in different regions, in different cities. I'm sure that the mayor of Sofia may talk about environmental issues which are concretely translated into some issues in Sofia. So I really would like you to talk about those challenges in those terms, how you see them from Bulgarian perspective, maybe from the perspective of all European Union commissioners. So I will give you the floor for the introductory words, and I will try to be as protocolar as I can. Deputy Prime Minister, you must be the first. There is no other way. I will start with Deputy Prime Minister Tomislav Donchev, and then Commissioner Gabriel, and then the Deputy Minister for Education and Science, And then there is a bit difficulty, Marco is you, or is the president of academy. You may agree between yourself what would be the protocolary, the most important. Deputy Prime Minister, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. This is an innovation format, so I will try to give an innovation slant. Do we need innovation when it comes to control access to this room where we are today? I also keep in mind the following. As we comment policies at the top, we need to steer away from boring debates. I have many ideas in my head, and I hope we will discuss it in a very understandable language so that people don't leave us 10 or 15 minutes into the debate. We need to retain that connectivity between the top and the lay persons, and I hope we will steer away from cliches. So I need to infuse in you some healthy optimism. The Commission submitted yesterday the multi-annual financial framework. The package is more or less the same. There will be more money, 20 billion more for the Horizon program. So on the basis of those numbers, I could say, colleagues, the future is bright. But that would be out of place. And we do not need to explain everything giving budgetary numbers. That would be very suspicious because innovation, when it comes to quality, depends to whatever extent on the budget. But I maintain that the less it depends on public funding, the better. We need to improve leveraging our capability to use as little public funding as possible. But we will revisit the money issue. But now I would like to draw your attention to something else. In Europe, sometimes we have an adequate or an inadequate historical self-esteem. Perhaps we have contributed to at least half of the inventions in the history of mankind. This does not mean that in the next 50 years things will proceed in the same way if we just sit back and remain complacent. And I can give you a few examples. $3.5 trillion is the market value of the Silicon Valley shares. 3.5 trillion. This is thrice the EU budget for the programming period in question. And if we take Shenzhen in China, they're far ahead of any other place worldwide when it comes to innovation by 9 months. They're 9 months ahead of everyone else, and that's a terrible amount of time. This is 1/5 of the mandate, and there is so much you can do in 9 months. Miracles. So, dear friends and colleagues, we cannot look for excuses and try to be complacent because we have the budgetary numbers. And if we stay only within the budget, we will forget about the ecosystems, entrepreneurship, the spirit of entrepreneurship, because you need people to do whatever it is you need to do. And I do remember that we've been talking about education. Curricula are not first and foremost. What are the incentives that we're providing? And if we want to have an innovation environment, we have to let them make and commit errors. Unless you commit errors, you cannot move ahead. And you can try 3 times, and then the 4th time you will succeed. Do I have a few more minutes so that I can close with a good scenario? Well, Many, many years ago, when computers were 8-bit computers and we had no hard disks, I was absolutely sure I would become an engineer, and then I swerved off the path. So young innovators had the self-esteem, having created the first digital thermometers in the country, went to an exposition, and we were truly upset that there were no hard disks. We had to use floppy disks. So we thought, well, we have to be innovative. And I was very good. I created something. What's a plotter? A plotter is a system that is managed by a computer. We turned it upside down on its side, and we used a small manipulator in order to be able to work on the plotter. Then we put all the floppies into a rack, and then I could take them from the racks and put them into the computer, which was very easy. And that was a great invention. We were taken to an associate professor at the university. They said, "You're great people. You have a wonderful idea, but that manipulator is of no use because they're hard disks." And I was so terribly upset. And then I drew several conclusions. First, whatever effort you invest, no matter how hardworking you are, if you're on the wrong path, you won't get anywhere. Secondly, if you've taken up the wrong path, you will end up nowhere. But you may draw lessons, and that's the only way to learn. And then one day, once you find yourself on the right path, you can make use of that. And putting the plotter sideways and fitting it with a small manipulator found its application in some other area. Why didn't anybody take up its potential? But further down the road, I gave up on all these innovations. So that was tongue-in-cheek, and I tried to be more provocative and stir away from cliches. And I hope if there are any innovators in this room, they're not bored. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. I think it is very good that you started as entrepreneur and then becoming Deputy Prime Minister. I think it's a perfect pathway. So then you were on the right path, not on the wrong path at the beginning. But I think it's very good, and I think that what you said is absolutely important, because this kind of experience is important also for politicians, for decision makers, because you know what kind of ecosystem you need to invent in Bulgaria, and I think this is very important. Commissioner Gabriel, you are responsible for the fast-growing, fast-changing portfolio, so I'm sure that your daily life is fulfilled with all those challenges and how to tackle them. What is your take on this issue, innovation, challenges, and society?
Mayor Fandekova, esteemed participants, good morning from me as well. Allow me to thank the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. You really give us a lot of energy. You charge us with dynamic energy, and thank you, Mr. Schucher, for your efforts. In the EU, digitalization is taking place at a breakneck speed, but we want it to serve the people. That's what I want to stress upon. No matter what we do in the field of innovation, but we should not forget the citizens, the fact that they are in the center of this process, and the process is managed by people. This is the most important messages. And then we are faced with the Achilles heel of the digitalization. We need to think about digital skills. We have very well-educated young people, but 169 million Europeans lack digital skills. And that's why I would support and encourage any initiative at the local and national and regional levels. We need to invest in people. And even more importantly, 1 in 5 graduates in STEM technologies is a woman. Only 18% of those working in innovation in ITC are women, though. So if we give more opportunities to women and young women and girls to take part in innovation, we will cut the gap by 60%. So at the regional and local level, good practices can be implemented in this field. Moreover, in the European Commission, we understand that innovation, research is confronted by a major barrier, namely national borders. And now, on the 25th of May, thanks to GDPR, we would have free exchange of data. And in December 2016, we put a proposal for a regulation for the exchange of non-personal data, how innovators can develop their talent in Europe if they do not have access to data. So we are moving more to metadata, big data, and more big computers. So the good news from yesterday from the European Commission is that within the new budget, our ambition for digitalization to serve people, SMEs, to serve our economy is embodied through our new program, namely Digitalized Europe. No single state can deal with challenges like cybersecurity, digitalization, artificial intelligence. So let us at the EU level send a clear message, first and foremost to our citizens, namely that their security is important to us and invest in their skills. Cybersecurity is important to all of us and businesses. Let me remind you that 80% of EU businesses still do not understand how vulnerable their systems are. 40% say that they have vacancies but find it extremely difficult to recruit the experts they need. That's why we at the EU want this type of policy to be at the forefront. In the few years, we have 50 million under the Horizon 2020 program in order to set up a network of centers of excellence. We want to involve experts. We want to attract experts and invest not only in technologies but also in human expertise. We also invest in artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is and will be more and more part of our daily lives. By 2030, it would allow the local economies to grow by 30%. Over 30 trillion is what artificial intelligence can bring about. We need a concerted approach, which we presented only a week ago. We say we want to invest into the technologies in Europe. We want Europe to retain its leadership where it exists. Very often we hear examples like the fact that only 4% of the digital platforms are European, and that's true, but we are a leader in robotics, in micro and nanotechnologies, and these are areas which, in my view, Europe should retain its leadership. But artificial intelligence brings up a number of ethical issues, namely rights, responsibilities, and this is the added value of the European approach. We should not be afraid to raise controversial issues, and we need to look at the impact of artificial intelligence on the labor market. Today, the fears concerning new technologies are substantial, and on the other hand, there are others who are optimists, and this is the big challenge. If we succeed through innovation, through research and digitalization, find a way to implement all this in practice, this should create more trust in the citizens. But if we fail, we'll fail in the bigger process. So I'll finish with that and once again express every support, for every initiative at the local level. It's clear that political actions are so important, and that's why we see such positive development in Ireland, the specialized center in Dresden, and Sofia, an incredible example. This is what the digitalization is all about. It opens up opportunities, it creates new products, and what is important for me is that not everyone would work in their small corner, but digital skills would allow access to everybody, even small and medium-sized enterprises. We need a common concerted effort in Europe and the people at the center of this effort. Thank you.
Yeah, many thanks, Commissioner. I think that you are absolutely right, putting the people, citizens, however we call them, but these are our people around us, into the center of this business, because the social license for innovation is extremely important. Because how many failures we have in the past because it was simply not accepted by people. And also the skills and competencies, I think this is at the core. No, you're right, 20% of Europeans do not have e-skills. I think this is, I'm very happy that Joint Research Center contributed with creating the European competence framework for e-skills, but also what is even more important, for entrepreneurial skills. I think that we have the best concept right now, which is just leaving our drawing board, and it will be ready in a few weeks. Vice Minister Dimov, what is your point of view? How do you see, as somebody who is responsible for citizens, their education, for science, what is your take on innovation? How you are tackling this here in Bulgaria?
Thank you for this question. Mr. Donchev, Mrs. Gabriel, Mrs. Fandakova, Mr. Schucher, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the question we are addressing today is of paramount importance, and I'm going to give you my take on it. For me, the center, the basis for success, the basis for innovation is education, education, education. Luckily, in this country, we've got very strong traditions which we need to further develop. What's been mentioned about the education system is really, really important. I think from the first forms of school, even from preschool, we can start using the systems such as STEM and STEAM. As Mrs. Gabriel pointed out, it is very successful to combine. It turns out to be very successful to combine arts and maths. This very often leads to serious scientific discoveries and innovation. I'd like to emphasize the important role that Commissioner Gabriel plays and has played in shaping the digital policy for Europe, because the initiatives that have been launched are of great importance to us, and she's been able to do what we, the older generation of specialists and professors, have not been able to achieve. So, thanks to enthusiasm and political will, we have made considerable headway. JRC, I believe, leads a very good policy in shaping the European position, in selecting policies in order to highlight, to bring to the fore the areas where Europe is strong and can be innovative. As you know, I'm sure, one of the major priorities of the Bulgarian presidency is the Western Balkans and the digital connectedness with the Western Balkans. I'd like to say a few words about the efforts the Bulgarian academia is making in this particular field. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say that there are 371 projects within the 2020 horizon in Bulgaria, and quite a few of them are being carried out in partnership with our colleagues from the Western Balkans. According to the statistics we have, Bulgaria and Serbia score best in ICT, secure, clear, clean and efficient energy. In our joint projects with Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, Kosovo, we have made important achievements in social challenges, pure technology, clean energy, climate change, to mention a few areas. I'd also like to highlight the success in innovations in a few projects. One of them is the GIANT project, which is a European project for academic networks, academic connectedness. You can see a map on the screen now of this connectivity. This is about broadband connectivity between research institutions and universities, and its capacity is quite impressive. 50,000 kilometers of network length. Another project I'd like to flag up, that's the BRICE project, which is a network of the major centers, computer centers in Europe. This is something very important. We didn't used to have supercomputers in Europe, and not a single one that was in the world's top 10. This is a rapidly changing situation now. Thanks to the joint efforts in this field, Europe is now yet again claiming a leader's position in this field. We are striving to push this priority forward as well. Other projects that are important are cloud technologies, grid technologies. They are also enjoying very positive development. They are in the process of creating new innovations which will be particularly helpful for the European citizen, and particularly helpful for our region, in particular the Balkan region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. for raising the issue of Western Balkan as a very important, as a presidency priority. Also, this conference is focusing in its second day on the Western Balkan, and on this dimension we will start this time tomorrow with a presidential panel which will be moderated by my colleague and Director General of DG NEAR of the Commission. Let's go on and let's move, Marco, to you. So you were born as an innovator, then you did a fantastic job back in Finland, and then you became president of the Committee of Regions, and you put into the heart of your presidency the promotion of innovation. So I think that this is in your blood. So then what do you have to tell us about innovation, places and regions?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vladimir Suha. Madam Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, really I want to stress heavily that in all parts of Europe we can really do a lot for the future, kind of inventing the future. But what does that mean? And especially now in the frame what was yesterday announced by President Juncker on the new multi-annual financial framework, I'm very pleased, and we at the Committee of the Regions are very pleased on the really important and huge increase in research, innovation and digitalization finance. On the other hand, of course, we would like to see, and we will fight for that, so to get more cohesion funding. But the most important thing is really that with these financing instruments, we can really, and Europe will create more synergy between different financing instruments. EU money is and should be more catalyzing, enabling new developments. Most of the financing always needs to come from the national, regional, local, public and private money, and especially the investments. But let's put this in the frame of this conference a bit. So, Vladimir, what you stressed, the place, the role of place, I would call that we need to create the future-centered societies, communities of people being places where people and organizations take thinking about the future as natural and as necessary. And now I don't mean only this traditional quarter of a year policy, or as policymakers, what is for me for the next 4-year term, how to be re-elected and so on. We need to have also the future thinking, more mid-term, long-term thinking, and that's where we have encouraged a lot all the cities and regions to do more. And now with the future of Europe, we see very clearly that future will be much more what we could call the bottom-up. Local citizens, small companies, large companies, educational establishments, collaborating there locally on their what we can call the regional innovation ecosystems. And on the other hand, what is now on the topic of this conference as well, smart specialization. And that means that we take the full use of all knowledge, what is available, what has been invented somewhere, can be used in my region, in your region, and so on. And that means that we need more European partnerships, and that is very much based on the smart specialization. And that seems to be now finally coming and going through the European Union policy very strongly, and on that, so we need this digitalization. Especially when we think the future, so people of organizations in future-centered societies think about what is coming and what is possible. They are aware of what's emerging, what's converging, and what the implications for society are. They understand where they come from as a starting point, where to go next. And they are ready to what we can call not just planning, but more prototyping, experimenting, failing fast as learning, and then scaling the results through the rapid prototyping to the rest of Europe. This is very much what these future societies are. And this is what the place-based innovation ecosystems can and will bring the European Union policy. And that is where the role of Joint Research Centre has been instrumental. And this is what I'm actually challenging the Joint Research Centre to create more. What is the new role of cities or city-driven regions on this new development? And that's where the action needs to be. And that's where the action is, but that needs to be based on these partnerships using all the resources in Europe. Is Europe today a future-centered society? That is what we can ask. And some people and some organizations certainly are, but many others have a short-term orientation and operate with blinkers in what they mistake for the here and now, moving from day to day and crisis to crisis with insufficient attention to the wisdom of larger focus and longer time frame provide. How we can address this challenge with the Joint Research Centre Committee of the Regions, as we represent all the cities and regions in EU decision making. So we have created, or actually Joint Research Centre created this Science Meets Parliament, Science Meets Regions, what Vladimir Suha already mentioned. In addition, being here, I want to mention the role of the Bulgarian delegation to Committee of the Region with the Tanya Ristova, the mayor of Gabrovo being the chair president of that, with Malina Edreva being another key instrumental person on that, so representing strongly Sofia. One of the good examples we're actually having Mr. Donchev here. I want to mention that some 2 years ago we were spending 3 days in Gabrovo. your former city, and where Tanya Ristova is now the mayor, they organized a 3-day innovation camp with 100 participants, 1/3 from local young and older people, people with different backgrounds, 1/3 were coming from other parts of Bulgaria, and 1/3 from abroad. And that was really tackling these grand societal challenges, and actually mentioned especially Tomislav Donchev, you were one of the challenge owners there, trying really to create and get new, fresh ideas from the participants. And our role with the Committee of the Region is now that when we have organized 200 events, citizen dialogues in all parts of Europe. So we are now putting our proposals for the President Donald Tusk and the Council. So what should be happening in the next years in EU, and that's very much based on this kind of thinking on the new role of cities and regions. Cities are places both physical, and here especially I want to stress digital places where people can meet, encounter new ideas, explore future possibilities, think outside the normal boxes, learn about how society is changing and what the social and societal innovations can bring to the everyday life of people. This is very much that we need to showcase in Europe, and that's why I think that now here I can call on behalf of the Committee of the Region, so Vladimir Suha and your team, to move more with the cities, defining what is the new role of cities, city-driven regions on this kind of, not the foresight exercise as a traditional academic scientific sense, but that starting from the foresight, seeing the future, what that can bring to the people, how we can mobilize the citizens to take, with their different interests and different backgrounds, more important role in creating the innovative future. And that's very much this regional innovation ecosystems. That's very much digital innovation hubs are crucial. And what Jordanka Fandakova here already mentioned, the collaboration that Sofia is actively participating, collaborating with the cities in Finland and in Estonia on digitalizing the urban development. And this is what I want to conclude, that there are a lot of these good exercises. In Finland, where I come from, we have 6 largest cities using the urban part of the cohesion funding for a joint development called 6-Aika, 6-time collaboration, focusing on what we want to get new things done, and that's very much kind of co-creating new things, and this is something that we can definitely bring to Sofia and other cities in Europe, how we move on with the digitalized new development processes. So thank you very much for Sofia and Bulgaria on what you have already done during your presidency. I've been here quite often recently, and it's our joint interest to take these proposals to concrete actions. So experimenting, prototyping, and scaling for the whole Europe. Thank you.
Many thanks, Markku. And indeed, what you said about the cities and JRC, we are already setting up the laboratory of cities, and I hope very much that if I meet, I think tomorrow, Mayor of Sofia, then she will agree to be part of this laboratory and this experiment, because this experimentation is very important, as you mentioned. President Rivalski, science, innovation was mentioned many times. So it's always, you know, a sort of stereotype thinking that science should be at the beginning of all innovation, which is not true, we know. And how you are trying to somehow overcome this? How are you trying to put the science into the heart of innovation ecosystem here in Sofia, but in Bulgaria, but also in this part of Europe? So what is the role of academy or academies in plural in this respect?
Thank you, Господин Shuha.
Thank you, Mr. Shuha. First of all, congratulations to the organizers of this conference, because smart specialization and innovation is the driving force of economies and societies in the modern world. At the same time, however, having said that, we need to look at the broader context. You mentioned the role of science in education, and my colleague Professor Dimov also touched upon this. We make a huge effort in this respect. You know that we have a strategy for smart specialization in this country. Mayor Fandukova mentioned that a similar strategy was adopted for Sofia with the support of the research community. After all, Sofia takes a large share of the innovations in this country. Last year, we adopted a strategy until 2030 for our research activities. We have a roadmap for our research, which the Academy is working upon. Allow me also to mention the very positive impact of operational programs, both the OP on competitiveness, but also the operational program on science and smart growth, which is now working on implementing top achievements in the field of excellence. Then we are working on a series of scientific programs which are important for the whole society, and of course innovation would have its leading role there. On Mr. Shuha's question, what we in the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences do as the main center of knowledge in this country. The first and most important issue is to rethink the balance between fundamental science and innovations. Without fundamental research, we can't even imagine that we may have any success in applied science and innovation. So fundamental science has its own role to play. But in the last 10 or 15 years, in the context of challenges of the modern society, we see a strong growth in applied research. If in the academy 10 to 15 years, more than half of the research was in fundamental science, now more than half is in applied research. So we do all we can in order to get this trend well established. And let me stress again, we can't think that we can leave fundamental science aside. If we do that over time, we lose applied science as well. The other important trend is subordination and synchronization of the policies in research with national and EU trends. So in this context, we are almost ready to adopt our strategy for research until 2030. More and more in the last few years, funding within the Academy of Science in Bulgaria is based on results, and innovation plays a leading role in that. I would say the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences is doing very well in innovations in the scientific infrastructure. We work on programs on OP competitiveness and the competitions for excellence and centers of excellence and centers of competence. Within the potential of the Bulgarian Academy of Science, there is a lot of potential in innovation. You know that in our strategy for smart specialization, there are 4 main areas. I don't want to rank them, but they are electronics and clean technologies, informatics and ITC, healthy living, and recreational technologies, creative and recreational technologies. We have excellent experts in all these fields. And here I would make mention of biotechnology, artificial intelligence, nanotechnologies, new materials. These are fields which are of key importance not only to this country, but also have their place in President Juncker's plan, what we can do and what we are doing, and which is linked up to transfer of knowledge and technology in the field of innovation. I would like to mention the following. We are a key player in cooperation with business. In the last few years, we have been working on over 40 different projects with Bulgarian and foreign businesses. I can't quote the number of patents we have registered, but I think only last year we registered 20 patents within the Academy of Sciences in Bulgaria. We also work on projects in updating the infrastructure for research. So much for our global activities. At the regional level, at the national level, we are very active too. And when we talk of the regional level, we are thinking of Southeastern Europe and the Western Balkans. We have networks which link 17 of the biggest cities in order to support the transfer of knowledge at the local level. Then there are other projects, and I'm not going into further detail because Mr. Dimov mentioned our role in the region, but we are a leader in the high productivity computing and the supercomputer, which was mentioned. We have joint projects with Romania and the Western Balkans in this field. So we understand our role as a regional organization, an organization with a regional significance in the transfer of knowledge. I will conclude by saying that we all understand the challenges we are confronted with in the field of innovation, particularly in a country, in a region like ours, where industrial development is still not at the level we wish to see, when the level of innovation absorption is not that high. We know what the key problems here are: the human potential, the continuing migration, the brain drain. We still lack well-functioning innovation leaders that are capable to start from the very beginning and then come up with something which can be adopted by businesses. And we need programs to help us solve these problems, which would give a boost to economies like ours, which are still in transition. We are encouraged by seeing that the share of industrial production is increasing, and of course this is good for innovation. And finally, I hope we will find an answer to the question how to strike a balance in the involvement of all stakeholders. On the one hand, education, research, government administration, and the society as a whole. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, President. I think Deputy Prime Minister and that we fulfilled your wish at the beginning to avoid cliches. So if I look at that, I think this was quite successful from that point of view. Obviously, we were according to the agenda, we were supposed to finish right now, but I don't think that we should finish. I think that we should go on because we started a little bit later. Then we will have this innovation for security invented maybe later on. There is one. There are two emerging questions from what you said, and I would like to ask you these two questions, if you allow me, and obviously I will ask you for brief answers. One is this big issue which was mentioned in one or another way by all of you, and that's what we should do in Europe in allowing the failures. I think that we know that innovation is this bumpy process. It's not linear. It's not that I decide today to do something and I'm successful tomorrow in delivering. So there are many non-successes. But in our culture, in our public administration, in the way how the money is being, in a way, budgeted, managed, spent, we don't have space for failures. What we should change at European level, national level, regional, local level, in education system, how we should, in a way, incorporate failures into the ecosystem of innovation. How we can, in a way, because it's completely different from US society, where the failure, if you don't fail, you don't even get the money because they are not sure that you are experienced enough, because this is part of your experience, but it's we are not even talking about the failures. So always we are giving the examples of successes. What we should do, how we can change or how we can start changing this kind of attitude.
That's why it's very easy to ask questions, but a lot more difficult, slightly more difficult to answer them. I don't know if there's anything we can change on the legislative level. Because, yes, all reform, all substantial change should be based in law. The main deficiencies in this respect are cultural ones, behavioral ones. And it is, above all, a matter of education. What I have in mind is not only critical thinking, it's the urge to do something else, something new, to take a new road. It is a cultural issue, a matter of mentality in many member states. A failure is a source of stigma. It stigmatizes, even if it only occurs once in life, no matter if it's in business, in politics, even in sport. And if there's something to take away from other cultures, that would be the determination to try again and again, because you gain experience with failure. And we should stop stigmatizing mistakes. Now, I'm not sure I don't think this is achievable in politics, but in business, in science, yes, we can. So yes, my short answer is that it is education we should be looking at. Yes, indeed, this is the greatest challenge. Mentality, stopping stigmatizing those who have failed once. And indeed, Europe is very different from other places in the world in this regard. Think about a startup that has once failed, how difficult it is for it to get funding anew, to try again. And yes, indeed, I also believe, I agree that education is very important. Another important thing is close cooperation with all stakeholders, the finance sector, education, institutions. These should be things that are talked about. There should be awareness campaigns. We know that the successful of today outside Europe have experienced a number of cases of failure. And this is something that affects us all as a society in the long-term perspective. Microphone, please.
Mr. Dimov.
What Mr. Donchev said, that the main problem is that normally people are married just once and they're not trying to do it for the next time. So this is how to learn to be active. Това е начинът да опитаме да бъдем активни.
Yes, we should try to be active and succeed. We should not give up after we fail once. I deeply believe that the key to success and innovation is education. And that's education in a much broader sense that we are now considering. This is something that should start preschool, from the early years at school, because the human being has a staggering potential to bring together various areas of skills, and even if they fail in something, for example, they take up mathematics and things don't go as well as planned or hoped, and then they manage to succeed in art, for example. We need a synergy of education, science, and innovation. What's the natural process? How does it run? An educated person very often thinks about how to improve things, how to make things better, but then they need a potential in order to translate some research results into innovation. It takes an environment, a climate that can appreciate that innovation so that it can then grow into technologies. This requires infrastructure. This requires funds. If you want to work your field, you need the tools for that. Without supercomputers, without the technical capacity, Europe can never do a lot in the field of AI. So I believe that a synergy of education, science, and innovation, coupled with opportunities to implement, to apply interventions, that's the answer, and that takes infrastructure. There are things that need to be in place, first and foremost, and what we are trying to do is to create the best possible conditions for people working on successful research projects to translate those projects into innovations so that every citizen could benefit from that, and regional development could benefit from that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me add that to that, so that the Committee of the Region, we defined for our policy 3 key kind of focus areas where we need to influence through the cities and regions to the EU policy. One is the entrepreneurial mindset. The other one is really moving faster to digital single market, kind of fully functioning digital single market. And the third was defined as smart specialization, so and build on that, so more this European partnership, so that the knowledge created in one place will be used in another one. All of these are targeted for sustainable growth, not whatever growth, but for sustainable growth. And on that, whatever of these aspects we think about, so everything is based on learning. So we, as politicians, we need to learn, you need to learn, and we need to encourage our children and our senior citizens' silver potential to learn, keep on learning. And I think this is the core of this, so, but we need to move faster so that we can really tackle the grand societal challenges.
Okay, President.
Нека добавя, че
Thank you. Just like Mr. Donchev, I don't think anything wrong, anything scary in failure and mistakes for innovators, for researchers. All of us who have been in academia know all too well that in order to reach truth, you make a lot of mistakes. Truth takes failure, first of all. So we should be more tolerant, more accepting with our youth. We should support them and make it clear that there is nothing wrong with failure. In the Mathematics and Informatics Institute at the Bulgarian Academy, we have a student institute, which is a center for high school students who can take part in projects led by their teachers or some university students. But all this leads to a final in a competition, a final, which gives them, final stage, which gives them the opportunity to go to a relevant research scientific institute in the US, where they stay for 6 weeks to work on other projects supervised by world-known established scientists. So one of the boys was a runner-up. He got second place in the area of information technologies, and I tried to reassure him. I told him, there's so much ahead of you, and only 2 years later, that boy had one of the most successful startups in Bulgaria. It's called Melissa. They develop smart solutions for implement control. So his first case of failure didn't stop him from moving forward. Sometimes, however, failures do lead to failure.
Okay, and my second question is a little bit different. In looking at the smart specialization, evaluation of smart specialization, there is one weakness, one strong weakness which was identified in a smart specialization, and that's the locking in the regions into their problems, into their challenges. So that the region is trying to solve the problems within the region by using the money within the regions, in spite of the fact that also the financial regulations and the rules are allowing to go elsewhere. But for most of the challenges of the regions, there is eventually a solution somewhere else, in the country or in Europe. How we can achieve this kind of European dimension in solving, or European cooperation in solving the regional issues? How we can help to reach out to the solutions which are probably somewhere else? And it is also what you, President of Academy, you mentioned about this capacity for absorbing the innovation. Because very often we have a small entrepreneur in one region. There is no capacity in the region, but maybe somewhere else there is a capacity to absorb, but they don't know. We don't have a mechanism. We don't have platforms where this can happen. What should be invented in a way? What way we should approach this issue? Because that would be extremely bringing a lot of efficiency, and we can move as a Europe much faster forward because we will be helping with this. I see Commissioner wants to respond first.
Аз искам да дам 3 конкретни инициативи.
Yes, I'd like to bring up 3 initiatives of the Commission that seek to meet this challenge. Connectivity is one of the major problems, and we should not ignore it. 76% of urban areas do have good connectivities. That's 30 megabytes per second. In rural areas, that drops to less than 40%. I'd like to thank very much now Mr. Markula and the Committee of the Regions. They help us a lot in developing a common platform to overcome all obstacles for investment. Secondly, our industry digitalization strategy By 2020, we are planning to have a digital hub in every region of Europe. So this would be a place where the startups can go and trial and test their model, to get training, to get information, get in touch and network with others. What we're trying to achieve is that all these hubs are interconnected so that good practice can be exchanged. And our last initiative, which was launched a month ago, that's called Innovation Radar. There are more than 3,200 innovations all over Europe that are pooled together in that platform. So everyone who's interested can tap into it, get in touch with another region, find out what funding there is and whether or not they can take part. This is what the Commission is now doing. We are trying to enable the local level more and more, to empower it more and more, in order so that they can build up their capacity, build up and enhance their skills and absorption rates. Yes, I'd like to add something as well. I think the most powerful adaptation tool is the market itself. When a product and innovation is sought after, when there's demand for it, this is the leading factor. And what Mrs. Gabrielle said is very important. European initiatives work within large-scale European projects, complex projects, enables countries with smaller capacities to very successfully take part in those highly complex projects. Because it so happens that there are certain groups of innovators, of scientists or researchers who are very good at specific areas, such as genome research, personalized medicine, outer space and space technology. This is a huge field, but even in a country like Bulgaria, as small as Bulgaria, there are 4 sub-areas of space studies that Bulgaria is very good at. And when we work in collaboration with other countries, even China as well, they can see the potential in that, and that potential is being utilized to quite a full extent. So combining the market and the natural way of finding innovations, combining that with the existing capacities, existing research potential, can boost innovation and new technologies very very strongly. This is something that has been happening and I think will continue in future as well.
Commissioner Maria Gabriel, when you mentioned the collaboration with the Committee of the Region, so we really see that we are more like a platform for bringing the experiences from cities and regions. So, and we have challenged our members to take their city or region as a forerunner, kind of pioneering certain things. And that is very important. So how to use innovative public procurement, how to form a strategic alliance with the key stakeholders there locally, or what I said in my opening speech now here about this future-centered society. So how we can have living labs, fab labs, incubators, accelerators, innovation camps, boot camps, whatever so they are, so that they are the places where people come and then they are really feeling that they are part of the team, kind of community inventing something important together. And that is something that we need to learn from these, but then we need the virtual reality, the digitalization. So to get them to work together and feel that we are part of that kind of settings, future centers are kind of part of the European-wide movement and learning from each other, because that's where the real action can bring some new fresh ideas. And this is again, then we come back to the learning is the key.
Едно нещо, което според мен може да се...
There is one thing that we could do in order to overcome this lack that Mr. Shuha mentioned about technologies in the regions. This is something that can be done by the country in question. For instance, over a certain period of time, there may be priorities which have to do with innovation and applications development. But a country is called upon to maintain its scientific base so that when a new challenge emerges, then that country would be able to resolve it based on knowledge. Therefore, the parliaments in countries such as ours, for instance, can be a great help in the future development of innovations by ensuring that there is a top-quality scientific base. So, for instance, the past year was very important for academia in Bulgaria because we had a research strategy which was adopted. And if that strategy is implemented across academia and scientific centers, then we would have the experts who would be top quality, and they will be able to roll out the new technologies and specialization that we need. Yes, indeed, if priorities are adopted, then within a year you can build laboratories and equip them, and in fact set up a whole research city. And we usually do not act so fast. But I trust in the approach, the smart specialization strategy. You cannot prioritize everything. If you prioritize everything, there is no priority, in fact. And then you have public funding, support for critical research, and so on and so forth. You have to prioritize. You're going to say where your advantages are and build upon that. But you cannot limit. You cannot introduce limitations. And I'll give you a few examples from Bulgaria. Some of the best things which have happened in the past decade in Bulgaria in production have happened without any public funding or planning. The Plovdiv industrial zone, the concentration of industries there, of companies which have nothing to do with machine building, have not received any support from the state. It's all thanks to private initiative. Decades ago, we did not have this objective in mind. For instance, that Bulgaria should be a leader in car parts or something, or that we should be amongst the top producers of lavender. There's no politician or public official who has thought of that. So, to sum it up, in order to take up public funding, you have to have focus. And you have to rely on the triple S approach. But at the same time, there has to be a lot of leeway. We cannot be wiser than the market and the world market system and dynamics. We cannot know better what the niches are. So everyone has to be left alone to live up to their destiny. And I'm talking here about regions or cities.
Have been better concluding remarks. So let me thank you, this wonderful panel, Deputy Prime Minister Donchev, Commissioner Gabriel, Deputy Minister Dimov, Vice President Marko Markula, and President of the Academy, Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, Revalski. Now I would like to invite my colleague Charlina Vicheva to take over the second panel.